So, Tom, let's talk a little bit first about some of the news of the day, right, which is President-elect Donald Trump meeting right now with General David Petraeus. And, of course, lots of headlines coming out over the weekend about whether Mitt Romney is fit to be Secretary of State. I'm kind of curious, just given in the context of your book, where you talk a lot about, the convergence of trends between technology and markets and climate change and how it's getting faster and faster, how do you think the role of Secretary of State has changed than, say, versus 8 years ago?
Well, I think the big change, Betty, has to do with the fact that the macro change is that to be Secretary of State for so many years of the United States, especially during the Cold War, was all about managing power and strength. Our strength and our opponent's strength are the other great powers, Russia and China. Today, so much of being Secretary of State is about managing weakness. Our weakness, the weakness of Russia, and the weakness of many states around the world that are literally falling apart in your hand. And managing weakness is hell on wheels.
Managing weakness, it's fascinating. Okay, so let's dig deeper into that. Who is a better person fit for that job then? When you look at who has been put out there, you've got Mitt Romney, you've got David Petraeus, you have Rudy Giuliani. Who is the better person fit for that job?
Well, I wouldn't get into the endorsement business, but it is someone who I think can arbitrage multiple different perspectives. Because to be Secretary of State now, yes, you have to know how to manage the great power relationship. But you also have to deal with, we're in this really strange geopolitical inversion, where, first of all, our friends, and when the world gets this interdependent, our friends can actually kill us faster than our enemies. So if Greece doesn't pay its bills and goes bankrupt, every Bloomberg viewer today will be affected one way or another. Greece is an ally. Greece is in NATO. It's in the EU. Greece can do terrible damage to us today. And at the same time, in an interdependent world, your rivals falling is actually more dangerous than your rivals rising. So if China takes 2 more islands in the South China Sea, personally, I couldn't really care much. But if China's stock market melts down tomorrow, every viewer of this show will feel it. Same with Russia. I don't like what Russia's doing in Ukraine. I'm glad we are standing up to it. At the same time, though, if Russia were to collapse and spill nuclear weapons and nuclear scientists onto the world stage, that would be far more dangerous than anything it's doing and mucking around in Eastern Europe.
So then it's not necessarily a mistake or troublesome that a president like Donald Trump wants to work closer with Russia, as he said on the campaign trail?
In theory, there's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, I would say, Betty, that there's very few big problems in the world we can solve, whether you're talking about Syria or climate or nuclear proliferation, without Russia's help. The question is, on what terms? Is it on terms that allow Putin to stomp into his neighbors, or on terms that where he agrees he's not going to do that? It's really all about the terms.
Okay, Tom, you've mentioned in your book, I want to get into your book. Thank you for being late. You mentioned that there are 18 things that the American government should do, from setting up a single-payer health system to more free trade agreements, to focusing on climate change. What do you think, if you were to single out one important thing that President-elect Trump or that Congress should do to make America great again, what would that be?
Well, the basic argument I'm putting forward in the book, Betty, is that I think we have to get out of this sort of left-right dichotomy. I don't think that model serves us well in the 21st century. Our 2 parties were really built around answering questions of the New Deal, the Industrial Revolution, the early IT revolution, and civil rights. I think that the parties of the future have to answer the question of how to respond to what I call the 3 great accelerations in the market. That's globalization, Mother Nature, climate, biodiversity loss, population growth, and Moore's Law, technology. How we get the most out of those accelerations and cushion the worst. And so where that takes me politically is, on some issues, I'm to the left of Bernie Sanders. I think we should have a single-payer healthcare system. If you can work for Sweden, I don't see why it can't work for us or for Singapore. At the same time, though, I'd abolish all corporate taxes. I would replace them with a carbon tax, a tax on bullets, a tax on sugar, and a small financial transaction tax. I think we need to get radically entrepreneurial over here in order to sustain what are going to be, I think, much more needed safety nets over here, because this fast world is going to be too fast for more people.
But those are extreme ideas, Tom. What is actually executable, right? What is actually an idea that we can actually execute on?
I don't think they're extreme ideas. And in fact, I think going along with the status quo, it would be extremely stupid.
Okay. Talk a little bit about why you came. What was the impetus for writing this book, Tom?
Well, the impetus is that it was very clear to me that the world isn't just changing, but it's actually being reshaped. And the workplace is being reshaped. The geopolitics is being reshaped, all the lines we discussed. Communities are being reshaped, and ethics are being reshaped. I have a chapter in the book called Is God in Cyberspace? And what it's really about is whose rules and values are going to prevail there in this realm, cyberspace, where we're all connected and no one's in charge. Look at this election, what we saw.
Right.
That we saw fake news. We saw, post-truth. We saw people hacking. So much of our lives have moved into this realm where we're all connected and no one's in charge. It's a hugely important issue, and it's going to get more important every day.
Now, you met with President-elect Donald Trump when he came to the New York Times last week, right? And you were actually, you wrote a column where you said that you were quite surprised that he was a little bit more moderate than candidate Trump. So did you come away feeling like that there was perhaps more hope for for executing on more moderate policies, or what did you come away from that thinking?
Well, I was very focused, really, Betty, on one issue, and that's climate.
Right.
And trying to, I've been since the election trying to focus on the climate issue because for me, there's a lot of things Trump can and can't do that will be reversible. I mean, even a Supreme Court appointment may take a long time, but it would be reversible. There's one decision that he could take that would be irreversible. And that would be if he were to take America out of the lead of leading the world to mitigate climate change. I think the impacts of that could be irreversible. So I was really focused on that. The question you always have to ask with Trump is, which Trump? Because this is someone who learns much more from talking to people than from reading. He's been surrounded by a certain group of people since this election began. And he's now opening his universe up to people like Dave Petraeus or Mitt Romney or a whole host of other people. He said Bill Gates called him. He spoke with Tim Cook.
Right.
So he's now talking to a wider range of people. I think that's very good. That's very healthy. I would encourage that wider range to get in there. I think the election is over. The struggle for Donald Trump's soul has just begun.
And on that note, Tom, before we go, I mean, I know you're close to many CEOs around the country, people like Tim Cook and Jeff Bezos and others. Did you run these ideas by them? I mean, what did the business people say to you about this?
Yeah, no, I didn't run them by them. I was intrigued that, again, Trump brought it up, and I would encourage all the, smart thinking CEOs in this country, and there are many, like a Jeff Immelt or Bill Gates, to get in there with their views, their ideas. I'm not saying he's entirely up for grabs, but he's listening to a wider range of people right now, Betty, and it's very important that they get their ideas in there. He's been really clustered with a very small group of people, and many of them with extreme views. And I think it's very important that if he's opening himself up, that people dive in there.